Hello and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask what moves us, or more accurately, what's going to move us in future.
With the Rail Innovation Group's Johannah Liam and Liam Henderson, we look at debates, themes and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hi Johannah, it's been so long.
Is this our first podcast this year? Has it been that long?
No, I can't remember. I did the one in Sheffield a few weeks back.
I know you did the one in Sheffield a few weeks back.
Super exciting trip to Sheffield, C3 squared.
How was Sheffield?
It was lovely. I used to be a student there a long time ago, and I did end up sitting in the park having a beer because all the full. It's just like on the phone, really.
It's still too cold to be outside.
No, you just have to bring a bigger blanket.
That's not the point. If it was December, I could do with a blanket, but not in May. And I don't. Can you hear the wind?
Yeah, I can also hear the fact that I have my Christmas Rudolph slippers on because it's so cold here. Yeah. Anyway, so we have got back together because of an exciting day in rail. Da-da-da! Say it. What is it?
Well, I'm going to say it's the Williams-Shapps Plan for rail.
Indeed.
Because it's got longer.
Great British Railways. So,
what do you think?
Well, we decided that we'd do a quick podcast in response. I hope you read it. I have read all 100-ish pages.
116.
Well,
but I think it's about 180 if you take out the references and the title page and stuff, isn't it?
Yes. So yeah, I've read. So I don't know how you.
I have read it. Good. And
I took quite a lot of notes, which I need to go through.
I took a lot of notes as well, and I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, me too.
What's gone wrong? We've actually said something's quite good.
Well, yeah, taking politics out of it, it's like if I was just to look at it as whether you believe all of this stuff is actually going to happen or not, it says the right things.
Actually, I don't know whether it's about believing whether everything will happen. It's a lot of stuff that has to happen.
Right.
And of course, a lot of this, a lot of it will be in the detail. And a lot of that detail has still got to be outlined, because the one thing that I'm going to before we get on to it says a lot of the right things, is that I think overall in the areas that obviously it has been looking at and was part of the original review, it's really strong on, because because government and DfT and Williams have spent an awful lot of time thinking about it.
Right.
So all the things about Great British Rail and what's going to be subsumed into that, and structure and contracts for concessions and things like that. And obviously they're benefiting from the expertise of Haynes and Hendy as well, being involved in that process.
Right.
Then it's really strong. But then on all the other elements that maybe passengers will benefit from and they want to think about, and that it's quite weak. And I think probably to a certain extent the how it's going to do it, it is huge.
Yes. Would you say that's because you need to have the corporate structure in place for them then to commission child reports on, for example, how to improve that? I saw there's one on the environmental strategy needs to happen, and then the about passenger experience will happen later.
Well, it's interesting. It depends. I mean, I guess in terms of developing strategy and strategic plans and that, I guess it depends on which strategic school you belong to, really, doesn't it? Because in terms of the way it's being set up at the moment, is that one would assume that you have the strategy, which is the Williams-Shapps Plan. That's the strategy, and within that we are to expect a number of other strategies that will sit underneath that.
Yeah.
So things like, there'll be things that will be about the environmental strategy, there'll be the passenger strategy, there'll be the levelling up white paper to be published, which I thought was an interesting one that will have implications for Great British Railways. And as part of all of that, I mean, if you advocate that school of thought in terms of how you set strategic direction, then automatically it follows that your structure has to follow first before you do anything else. But then the thing about that approach is that does everything just sit in aspic for 2 years whilst you're sorting all of that out?
No, because there's some quick wins at the very end. It talks about the quick wins that are going to be done whilst they're sorting all that out.
So what are the quick wins?
Hold on, I just have to get to the right page, which is page something. Hold on. We have here we go. Right, contactless journeys and the continued rollout of digital ticketing, introduction of flexible season tickets, close engagement with the freight sector on fare access in the future and on development of a growth target, consideration of short-term infill schemes to support free ports, electrification infill schemes, development of a commitment to, delivering our commitment to pay-as-you-go travel, renewed focus on punctuality through the recovery contracts and national rail contracts, and clearer communication on trains, at stations, and on smart devices.
You see, what's interesting about that list, though, is that how would you define a quick win?
Something that you've already got the legislation and the funding ready to go to do.
So out of that list, how many things do you think are actually ready to go?
Flexible season tickets, because we've heard all about them.
Yes, we know that's going to happen on the 21st of June. And we already know that RDG have already done all the work with DFT for those projects. So
yeah.
Would we think in terms of quick wins that the rest of those would follow this year? Because punctuality and reliability is one of the reasons for the railway. They say very much up front, passengers expect an on-time railway. Well, of course we do.
Yeah.
So
clearer communication on trains and at stations is quite easy to do.
But why do we fail at it? Why do we find it so difficult?
Because we don't share data and information.
Which is interesting, because that was which number was that in terms of their commitments about open data by default? Because
it is commitment. It's up in this section just here. Accelerating innovation and modernization. And it is commitment. Open by default. It's called open by default, and it's commitment 56.
Commitment 56. So in order to get some of these things, they have to deliver some of the other commitments in order to get it. And I don't know. I mean, it's quite a turnaround for commercial organisations, and I don't know how many of these commercial organisations even have access to all the data that they're asking for. Because this is because I think it's interesting probably the influence that Hendy has had on this review, because of his experience of being at TfL and the fact that this is very much following a TfL model. And obviously you've got experience of working from TfL. So what do you think Great British Railways can learn from that experience? Because everyone's saying it's a TfL model, but what does that actually mean?
Well, you see, so there are some other what's the word I want to use? Suggestives further in document about the fact that whilst there will be governance structure and everything in place, the Secretary of State has a statutory ability to give directions and mandatory instructions to Great British Railways. And the way that you generally achieve things quickly in TfL is because the mayor said, I want this thing, and TfL did it. So whilst there was the longer term strategy, things such as the staff need to start talking to each other is a top-down instruction. If you want it to happen quickly, you just have to make that instruction. And I noticed that two of these new contracts were let yesterday, So I'd be curious to know whether those ones that were let yesterday have this requirement for them to be better at communication.
Or act upon instruction of the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Because up until now, Secretary of State, although has been very much arm's length. So now has that relationship changed? Is that clear? That
I think it is going to be an arm's length body for the entirety of Great British Railways, but the minister can issue directives and instructions. Anyway, we're jumping ahead quite a lot.
I know we're jumping.
I started to read. I read through this on the basis of, because I wrote some sensible notes at the very start, looking out for the interests of startups and small suppliers and keeping sort of the commercial element in some of the supply chain. Looking at how innovation was going to be maintained through open data and open systems and the right people who understand that. I've called it rail as the backbone of mobility, as in, are we going to start funneling the rest of transport through our existing rail network? And does this help that? As a passenger, the passenger experience, what I want to see on the trains. The passenger experience thing I was looking at also particularly, I did like the fact that it mentioned many times, which is a bugbear of mine, that as cycling has become more popular, we've continually moved space for bikes on trains. And this commits to improving space for bikes on trains. So,
yeah, I think thinking about the whole sort of like New Deal for passengers, as they said, I think there was there was a couple of things that you liked about it, wasn't it? Because it wasn't just about the cycles, but also the fact that there was going to be long term, they were going to maintain the vision of turn up and go, which obviously has been more difficult recently, particularly on intercity services.
I was very happy with that, to see that commitment was there.
But the thing that I really liked about the New Deal for passengers was the piece on customer needs.
Yeah,
the fact that it really did look as though they'd really thought about what customers wanted, what they needed, and what they wanted to get out of a train service, and that it went beyond just this whole getting from station to station, that it was about mobility, it was about getting the basics right. And so I thought that was really positive, and I did in terms of cycle space on trains, because both of us are keen cyclists, and that was good to see. But I think this is when I was saying about things being about there's still a long way to go, because obviously there's commercial arrangements with rolling stock companies, and I think earlier on in the report, when they were being quite critical about the overall rail service and its fragmentation, and how that makes it very difficult to get things done. So it's how's that governance and that process going to work? Because I say because I think I hadn't realised, because when they were sort of like going through all sorts of like some of the statistics, which I thought were quite interesting, there are 57 different types of rolling stock.
Yes.
I mean, there's no sort of like standard for a commuter, standard for an intercity, and whenever you want to do a change, you have to go through a process to change, because I don't fully understand all the engineering, but if you take seats out and put in a cycle space, it changes the kinetic envelope of the train.
Yeah.
So it has to go through safety testing and things like that, and that can be quite expensive. And I think that kind of leads on to another point about in the report about the big savings that they want to deliver as a result of making it simpler and reducing some of this complexity out of the system, and whether those benefit how long those benefits will take to be realized.
I think the problem with having, as you say, simplification means that someone is going to write the standards for simplification, and it'll probably be by committee centrally. But that, I don't know if this has been a problem on some of the recent rolling stock, but if you do it by committee in the centre, you're almost even specifying the innovation you want. You're not opening the market to say, we can bring you these exciting things. You're saying that the standard intercity train has this many seats of this style and at this comfort level, but there might be another way of delivering that outcome.
But I guess that's that's a really important point to make, because I think buried in some of this detail, and this is what I thought was quite interesting, particularly in listening to the news being reported and some experts yesterday commenting on, was it because some of the things that that hadn't been picked up was about the levelling up agenda, because people talk about levelling up, and I know that's been in the news this week as well. But one of the things I thought was quite important for this rail review was that they were talking about a lot more collaboration and a lot more of the of design and innovation actually being delivered at the local level, so that there would be accountability to local authorities, there would be more people involved, you know, from the community rail partnerships. The community rail partnerships might be even given the opportunity to bid for some of the concessions in the future, which I thought was interesting. And that sounds quite innovative, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't object to any of this stuff. I'm sort of just working through the potential.
Yeah, but I think, you know, but on your point about the rolling stock, I mean, like, yeah, the most trains recently have been designed by committee, and I think that's probably why they've been quite unsatisfactory outcomes for passengers.
Yeah.
So how do you does what is proposed, does that seek to address it by, because just because you have a standard doesn't necessarily mean to say that you have to give the innovation, providing you do it in the right way. And that's why I think it's important to come back to passenger needs.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of like saying it's a seat and it's this thick and all the rest of it. It's about, you know, meeting what passengers want, because I think the other thing linked to that, and I don't know how they're going to achieve this, is they mentioned about making it easier for people to work on their journeys.
Absolutely, yes.
And of course, we all know, you know, sort of like most of the Thameslink trains have all been, their design was all around getting people on and off the train quickly, and they assumed that people weren't going to work.
Yes, for the hour's journey.
And so as a result, they have no tables.
They do in first class.
Yes. Which is what a lot of people do. But there isn't many first class seats on those trains.
No,
because obviously that is someone to make it easier for people to work on their journeys, is about building back better, isn't it? And getting people back into, because one of the things it very much acknowledges is the challenges of getting people to travel again, you know, because we risk this a car-led recovery as opposed to a public transport-led recovery. And of course, you know, it acknowledges that we can't
do that,
but it acknowledges that we can't just rely on the commuters of the past. And this is quite interesting about, you know, because I know that there was the agenda before from Network Rail that, you know, was about putting passengers first and putting passengers at the heart of what we do, and there was already that acknowledgement, so that journey was already being made. But I think what's really interesting about this report now is that actually for the last 30 years a lot of train operators have not really had to worry about the experience too much, because it's been a distressed purchase.
Yes.
But the last year, we've all now acknowledged we have choices, and we can choose, you know, and how many people actually, you know, that maybe 18 months ago would have thought, well, I'm only going into, you know, I'm going into work every day, I don't really want to drive.
Yeah.
But maybe if they're only doing it 2 days a week, we'll think, well, actually, I don't mind doing that 2-hour drive. You know, it's only 2 days a week.
For that.
Yeah. You know, and
season ticket.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting the way, because so much of this is about habit, isn't it? And if you get out of the habit of stuff, then you just don't want to do it, because, you know, and I wonder, on our own experiences in that sense, because I'm very much in that I just can't be bothered anymore.
I know, but
you're different.
I know, but how many people are thinking like me, that I've spent 15 months in my loft.
Yeah.
I've traveled less than 10 times in the whole, 18 months. And I'm somebody that, traveled pretty much every day to London, flew internationally, and now I just can't be bothered with it all. I'm happy in my loft.
You've been put out to pasture.
Oh, thank you. And but you have to find ways to win me back.
Yes.
Or railway has to find ways to win people like me back.
Yes. And that is, I do see it in there, the theme that people don't have to travel. And it's not a case of competing with cars, particular journeys, competing with the fact that you don't even have to do the journey a lot of the time. So if you're going to choose to do it, you have to make it a nice experience. And that comes to the small things of either making it convenient so you can actually cycle to the station or take your scooter to the station. It comes from, can you buy the right things you want at the station? Can you get a seat on the train that doesn't face a white panel rather than a window? It's
Yeah, absolutely.
People. Is the light hideous and white, which is why I try not to get new trains in the evenings. And can you get food and drink?
And that is all really lovely, isn't it?
But that's,
you know, and you think,
people,
yeah, if the railway, but you see, and that that is in terms of how will this happen? Because one of the things, because everyone's sort of like yesterday, and all the commentary's been about Great British Railways, hooray, we're going back to nationalisation or whatever, and it'll be concessions and that. But there is so much in this detail of what does that actually mean? Because so people are picking up already, that marketing is becoming the responsibility of Great British Railways. So if I'm the operator and I want to offer a new product, what does that mean in terms of how I market it to my business? If I want to do if as part of this product I have a new ticket with it, what does that mean in terms of GBR for marketing that ticket and selling that ticket, and actually who's responsible for selling the tickets? Because at the moment, if you're on a station, so station management is all going to come under Great British Railways, sort of like, whether that be the operations, maintenance, or the asset, and that's all going to come under this new organisation. But who's going to be the lead retailer? Is that going to go to GBR, or is that going to maintain part of the concession? And all of those questions need to be answered. And even if you sort of like to make all those decisions, all the staff that are going to have to 2P and things like that, it's being said, we're making it simple, but the journey to get there is hugely complex. Well, and in the meantime, as I said, a few minutes ago, sort of like, what does that, we mentioned quick wins, but actually what does that mean in the interim? Because, going back to, schools of thought and that, do you have to do all your strategic thinking first and get all your structure right before you can start developing how do you make sure that you're always improving whilst you're waiting to getting to your end journey?
Well, I assume it's going to be iterative, and whatever is the most convenient thing at the time. I think looking for what you mentioned about stations, I don't think there's going to be ticket retailers at the stations, judging by what you read in it. I don't think there's going to be ticket offices. It's going to be, I think you're going to buy online or with an app, and there will be some people wearing a uniform who can help you. But I don't think there's going to be ticket machines or ticket what do you call them? Ticket offices.
Ticket offices, yes.
Yeah.
So you think that they're going?
Well, I mean, it says in there quite clearly that it's to bring the staff out in front of the passengers, and also we want to get rid of paper tickets. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity to sell a ticket.
No, so and I think that's again alluding to TfL again, because they've pretty much closed all their ticket offices down and it's all machines and that. So and this is where it is hugely complex, because right, I'm an advocate of closing ticket offices down and going online, but I can't remember the last time I went to a ticket office to buy a ticket. I have done in the last couple of years, but primarily because it's difficult to buy your season ticket online if you want to add Plus Bus to it.
Yeah.
So you have no choice but to go to the ticket office. But if but if I'm doing a long distance journey or whatever, I pretty much always, I do always buy online because you get the best value ticket online. So I can see why you would do that, but then there are lots of people who won't, who don't feel comfortable because of the complexity of ticketing. And I'd say in London, because they've sort of like created these travel centre hubs, haven't they, that mainly in main stations and that. How do you do that on the National Rail network? How do you decide which are your important stations to do that?
Well, there's grades,
whereby without disadvantaging people.
There's grades of stations.
But without disadvantaging people. I know there's grades of stations, but we could have an argument about the A to F station graded categorization, because I know even lots of people don't agree with that. But how do you decide which ones?
You put a commitment in that every station has.
And how do you know? And
all operations.
And I think it's interesting if you sort of like go back to sort of like some of the earlier points in the document as well about people don't have a lot of trust in the system, and it's quite important that you have trust in what you're purchasing when you want to go digital, isn't there? Because you probably find most people wouldn't think these days of going to a travel agent these days to book a flight, because they trust the EasyJet or Ryanair or whatever whatever booking agent they use online will sell them the best value ticket. Do people have that same trust?
No, and I think you're going to come up against the same problem where some people are able to get cheaper fares because they know how to get cheaper fares. It even mentions split ticketing in there.
Yeah, because if you travel regularly, or or not even so much if you travel regularly, but if you understand it, or if you're a data person or whatever, you can work your way around it. And I think what's quite interesting about is because we've moved on to ticketing, and that is about the whole creation of a GBR website and app.
Yes. So just before we go into that, one is that I don't know what has been put in there. Well, there hasn't been anything put in there about international visitors, and international visitors use the trains a lot, and they will generally go to the ticket office at one of the big London stations or whichever city they arrive in and buy a walk-up ticket. So I don't know what we're doing about that. But maybe we'll have segueing in. Maybe we'll have the app in multiple languages. So there's one central ticketing. So this is what I understand, and you can correct me. There's going to be one central app and ticketing retailer, but that retail API will be open so that if you're someone like Alton Towers, you can sell a park ticket and a rail ticket as one package, and GBR will issue the rail ticket automatically. I understand.
Yes, I think,
because it talks about concert halls and things.
Yes, yeah, no, I think that is the vision.
So for example, the large ticket retailers, third-party ticket retailers who advertise very strongly at the moment, do they have a business now?
I would say they still have a business, because unless the government are going to turn around and say we're going to have no competition,
which I can't imagine they'll do,
then which you can't imagine, then they still have a business. But I guess what their investors are worried about is long term. But I guess the thing about Trainline is people are so familiar with Trainline, and it's a good product.
It takes Apple Pay.
They're already ahead of the game. People are familiar with it. Why would you? If you like using Trainline or one of the other websites that allow you to book tickets, why would you change if you like using it, if it gives you what you need? You'd have to be designing something, and I think this is, if you think about its correlation to open data and TfL and things like that, TfL have just built their own app recently, but for a long time they had nothing, did they? It was all done by open data and other people developing on that. So one would envisage that it would be the same, and that basically it's the product that people would like using, what gives you the best user experience. And one of the reasons why people use Trainline a lot is because they have been innovative.
Yeah.
I mean, more innovative in retail than most train operators have been until recently. And they make it easy, because you just said they take Apple Pay. Well, of course, you just, I mean, literally, I mean, you can pretty much buy a ticket on Trainline in 3 or 4 easy steps, can't you?
Yes, you do. if
And
you're
generally, you
phoning
don't
the
have
ticket
to
barrier.
collect that. And generally, you don't have to collect the ticket either. It's on your phone.
Yes. So then
So-
do we imagine that it's actually going to be the case that there is one ticket, what's the word, issuer, but multiple retailers who have a different customer experience in their retail process, which would
That
then
would be a
support the open
differentiator, wouldn't
data
it?
idea.
Yeah.
And then
So,
also there is the
so I
fact,
don't. So although they're.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say
There is
that
the fact.
but the long distance intercity companies are apparently also going to be able to have their own fares, commercial fares, in it.
So now that was something that actually confused me about the document, because of this whole fare setting and being able to for the future passenger service operators to be incentivized to grow their business, because one of the ways that the long distance operators have done that has been through the use of advance purchase.
Yeah.
But and I actually wrote in my notes in terms of what they were in terms of the way, so GBR is going to be responsible for setting fares, and presumably there will be some sort of interface still with the Secretary of State in terms of the protected fares and the regulated fares in terms of what you can do with them. But who's going to decide how I sell advance purchase and how I set them if GBR is setting? So are they going to set the parameters for fares and the passenger service operators have to comply, or do the passenger service operators come up with a marketing fares scheme and say that's how I want to sell them? I mean, because
I don't know.
I would say between First Group, LNER and Avanti, and I do know all the systems that all of them are on, they're probably all on very sophisticated yield management.
Yes.
So they'll all have their own individual yield management schemes.
Yes.
And who's going to be responsible for managing the yield management for those operators? Will that stay with the passenger service operators, or will that go to GBR?
From what I've read, they will be able to have a separate yield management system just for their long distance operation.
So how is that making it simpler?
Because it's kind of the same as in the minute. You can buy a walk-up ticket on a long distance intercity for a regulated fare, or you can go and buy an advance ticket for cheaper.
If everything's going to GBR, why would you keep individual yield management with the passenger service operator?
Pass. Don't know. I probably can't explain it, but I understand why you'd want to do that, because you'd want to have the commercial company with a little bit of skin in the game.
We need to find somebody who can answer these questions for us.
We do. Well, we do have a few years of this being rolled out for us to get to that stage.
but it is interesting, isn't it? Sort of like, because I think in the diagram in the document they have this very complex diagram that says how it is now.
Yeah.
Sort of with sort of like the different operators and things like that, and then they've got this very simple diagram that shows sort of like the income still coming from the DFT, the fare box, going into GBR, into the passenger service operators. and they because I think the other thing that I think is interesting within those, we talked a lot about the fares and that, but is what's going to happen to track access.
Yeah.
In terms of the Schedule 4, Schedule 8 payments, are they gone? and what does that mean for freight operators? Yeah, and I know they said that's part of their quick wins to talk to freight operators and that, but though it was also very light, I think, on open access operators and what this means for open access, because there was a lot of, we're going to continue with open access if it's competitive to do so and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there was no real detail of what this means for the open access operators. And we've got, and I don't know whether it's still on schedule to start this year, but of course there's a new one starting on the East Coast Main Line this year, isn't there, by First Group?
The one you can fit any more
Is that due to start in December?
Maybe.
But well, I think there's a little bit of capacity at the moment because, as we all know, the pinch point is the Welling Viaduct. But I think also the work that they've been doing over the last 6 months to improve the signalling at King's Cross has helped with opening up capacity.
Right. Okay. Well.
So.
Just reading through to make sure I've covered off everything that I want to cover this so much. I took so many notes, but anyway, we've got open data sharing. Yep, check. We've got protecting the interests of startups, embracing startups. Check. We've got sorting out this innovation funding. So there's one central pool of innovation funding rather than lots of different organizations with separate competitions. So that's good, we think. As long as they keep giving out monies for innovation. Environment, I was surprised. Environment, sort of pro-green and decarbonisation things was kind of its separate little bit at the end.
But do you think that's because they've got this bigger green paper coming out?
That might be the case.
The green recovery plan and an environmental plan that they're expecting to deliver next year, and that they expect electrification and hydrogen and battery power and all that to contribute into that.
I'm going to assume so because it seemed suspiciously light on that front.
It was, and I think that's because it was light on some things, but I wonder whether actually one of the reasons why it was light on some of these things was actually what it was trying to do was put people at the heart of it. So it's because it was talking a lot about, the locality agenda, empowering local people, having a people strategy, putting passengers at the front of this, a passenger, and I wonder whether that was, I don't know whether it was by default or whether it was quite deliberate, but people seemed very much at the heart of this.
Yeah.
Because another thing that we haven't mentioned and was part of it was about an accessibility agenda, about doing an accessible plan and having a plan for the whole of the, and bringing in all that funding as well in together, so bringing in all the access for all funding, all the community rail projects. So that would also be one part which would also help with innovation and being able to improve the passenger experience. So I wonder whether that was quite, some of this is quite deliberate. And I think the other thing that we haven't also talked about, because we talked about the structure, but thinking about people and that there was a lot in here about they wanted people to be accountable, and there seemed to be a lot in about the structure about saying they wanted people to be accountable at the right level, so they want, so the senior leadership team were obviously going to be accountable to the Secretary of State, but they wanted the local teams to be accountable to the local authorities and to politicians and that, which is going to become
and empowered to make
yes
investment decisions.
And there seemed to be a lot in here about being able to get, if you're going to, be thinking about competing for one of these future contracts, concession agreements, is about getting extra points for collaboration and partnering. So this is actually talking a lot more to people than trains.
Yeah.
Which obviously, people always talk about train services rather than people and their mobility needs and what they need to get to places. So I think that's quite a positive step.
I think it's a positive step. I also, there are lots of good things in there. So let's hope it.
But a long way to go.
Yeah, but it's the start. We all know we know that COVID has sort of wiped the slate. So,
but so there are good things that can come out of this.
Yeah, if this is the structure we're deciding now is going to be the future of rail, one, it's positive that the government's putting a strong focus on rail. Two is that they have not said they're cutting the money. They're saying that there must be efficiencies, but it's not as though we're like winding down the network or anything. The three is the future green mode.
So we've done our little podcast. What's happening next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday we're doing a Munch and Discuss session, an open session for anybody to come to. We've already got quite a lot of people attending to talk about this, because I noticed that online lots of people were having obviously a review and asking questions of it, and I thought it was very good to just get people together quickly to give a first impression, first interpretations, and people might know the answer to assure some of the suppliers or anything else.
If people listen to us, they can come onto our Munch and Discuss and see whether they agree with some of the things we've thought about, and also give us some ideas of things that we had questions for or haven't thought about.
Yes. And also on Tuesday, we are releasing our Parcels as Passengers project.
Which is very apt. We didn't even talk about freight on the podcast.
No, we didn't. So we're going to do a whole nother one of that. When we've released the paper. So that's coming out Tuesday, all about putting small parcels on passenger trains, filling up the space we've got at the moment. So all exciting. And we've done all this within 1 hour's chat. All right then, nice to talk to you and have a good weekend.
So thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.